Alright, so hey there. In this video, I'm going to go through some helping tips and experience of mine on replacing the front bearing and the CV axle on my 2002 Duramax 2500 HD. It also has the 2-inch stock lift in it. And yeah, we're just going to go over that.
Donkey's breath.
As I said before, this is not a how-to. You can see I have everything apart already. This is where we're starting. This is just some tips and tricks. This is not for like the home user. You should generally more or less have a pretty good idea of what you're doing before you enter this. And I'm just gonna glance over a bunch of stuff that should be real easy and then get to the couple points I'm gonna. All right, for starters here on the bench we have our old CV. It was actually pretty easy to take out. But I was replacing it because it's a bit loose and there's a clank in this end that you can audibly hear. And then I also had it apart, and the bearing, you can't hear it now because it's still pretty tight, but there's a whirring noise in the bearing, so I thought why not do it all. So went to Lordico up here in Canada. This guy was $135 Canadian, and this guy was $320 Canadian. So yeah, bought this one this morning, got this one later. But anyways, a couple points I wanted to make. So let's jump back into here. For the first point is, okay, I'll just throw this up. So tire, you can take the tire off, and you can take your brake caliper off, put it up here like this. I ran a zip tie through the top here, just onto the top of the shock there, and held it right on the top of this A-arm pretty nicely. So that's nice. Alright, so then brake rotor comes off, brake rotor's right there. So then you take the center cap off, exposing the nut in the middle. So supposedly you do not want to use an impact on that nut at all. You want to break it manually with a breaker bar and probably a cheater bar. Mine was friggin' tight. And if you rattle it at all, you can damage the bearing. But my bearing was already screwed, so I broke her off, buzzed her off, and it's a 2-point compression nut that is only good once. So unless you want to go just when you do a bearing, if you're just doing a bearing, you got to make sure you are either really careful with that or just go out and buy a $20 one at the dealership, probably cheaper in the States. And done deal. You got a proper nut. Make sure you put that on and you torque it to spec, and you do not use an impact on it. After that, okay, so didn't touch the bearing yet. We're taking the CV axle out. And basically, I had to take my skid plate off. It was 4 bolts, 4 15mm bolts. It was really simple. I'm gonna try and get under there for you. It was pretty simple. But anyways, so then what was stopping me was no longer my skid plate in the way back here. Because okay, here. This is where she mounts onto with the 6 points on the differential. And so you undo that, it flops down, and you can almost get it out, but the skid plate's in the way. So you take the skid plate away, and then you can almost get it out, but then this end here bugs you. Right here. It bugs you. So then I undid this bolt in the shock, was able to two-hand it with a buddy, with my father, push this shock almost all the way up, and then he was able to wrestle it out barely. So we should be able to get it back in the same fashion. It's just going to be a little bit of trying, but you can get it out. So also I have my truck up. This jack here is actually doing nothing at this point in time. It's just kind of chilling. She's resting on 2 jack stands right on the front cross member there. Next point, so that's how I got the axle out. Next up was this guy here. It was actually I just did this part, is because I got 2 of them out, 2 of the 4 bolts out from the back with just a hammer and a 1/2-inch drive ratchet and the correct socket, which is also a 15mm. Now it was nice and rusted on the back of the bolts, so I brushed them off, got my socket on it, wrenched on them, had to tap them. 2 of them went properly. I mean, I even tried heat and a little bit of this Move It gunk on it, so it wasn't like I was just going in dry. 2 of them the head just stripped right off on them. One of them wasn't so bad, it was this one here. So I ended up actually just cutting it in the hub here. It was this top one here. So I ended up just running a zip cut down there and cut it off, so it was only acting on that part of the threads. You can see it's still in there. Here she is. So I had to do it twice. one on this one on top left, and one on bottom right if you're looking at the hub. And so then I was able to, it was actually pretty easy. Just hammered a socket back on because it's nice and stripped, and they came off. So neither the bearing nor it didn't come with these bolts. So sent my buddy here out to go get me some. And once he's back with the new ones, we should be installing this guy and this guy back in. And if I come up with any more advisory points. All right, so today is like 3 days later, and I got our bolts. Got back to town, got my bolts. You know how much 4 of these guys is worth? Like, way too much for 4 fancy ass bolts. It's like 50 bucks. Canadian, mind you. But like, wow. Alright, next piece of advice. Don't put the thing together and forget to put the splash guard for the brake rotor in. Because, well, then you gotta take it apart and put it in.
I'm just about up there, I got it.
Yep.
Yep. 4 bolts, $49.54.
Alright, so we're pretty much done under here. Run over the torque specs I used. 58 on the flange notch, the 6 have been there. 155 on the spindle nut here. Make sure you don't use an impact because it's a 2-side compression nut. 220 on the 2 mounting brackets for the knuckle to the brake caliper bracket. And what was it? 168, I believe, on the inside bearing to hub. It was 133 for the hub to bearing assembling to steering knuckle. Other than that, we just got to put the tire on and then the skid plate, and we're done here.
I didn't even see.
Drop